Welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Drew Leader from Loyola University, Maryland. I'll be talking about a small section of my new book, The Healing Body, Creative Responses to Aging, Illness, and Affliction. And today we're talking about a strategy I call re-envisioning. This is part of the Chessboard of Healing. The 20 different healing strategies I think people can and do utilize when trying to reconstruct their life in the face of serious bodily disruption through illness, injury, disability, aging, etc. And in some earlier videos, I talked about how this alters our relationship to time, and we may focus on remembering the past, anticipating the future, or presencing, staying in the present. And that might seem to exhaust our relationship to time, but far from it, because really, as we go through time, we have a sense of a kind of narrative, what is the meaning of our life, our previous experiences, what are the projects and goals we're trying to fulfill? Who are we? What is our fundamental identity? And all of this can be thrown for a loop when we have a serious chronic illness or an injury that brings about what has been called in the literature biographical disruption. I'm not the person I once was, or the trajectory of my life is not what I was anticipating. I have to really re-envision who I am and what my life is about. And I want to use a quote from actually a friend of mine. His name is Kevin Aho. He's a well-known philosopher, existential philosopher, who himself has written a book called One Beat More, that is somewhat about this massive heart attack he had, which was very surprising. He's relatively young. He's quite athletic. In fact, he was in the midst of a vigorous cycling journey when he had this massive heart attack. And here comes the long but very valuable quote. He says, "Any meaningful identity that I could envision was now constrained by the illness, and I would have to work against the background of these constraints to create myself again. Again, this process of reopening the future has been gradual. I've had to slough off identities that no longer hold for me. The most obvious is letting go of the sense of myself as someone who is fit, athletic, and strong. At least for the time being, I have to make do with slowness and being patient, with walking, stretching, meditation, letting go of the past and acknowledging that there are many different ways to interpret the idea of strength. But the heart attack cracked me open. I was suddenly overflowing, not just with anxiety, but with love and compassion. I called my brothers weeping shortly after the angioplasty, telling them how much I cared about them and how thankful I was to have them in my life. My girlfriend became my fiancée in the intensive care unit after my blood clot, and they're now married. As I struggle with the limitations of my altered body, let go of a former self that is no longer livable, and work to refashion a new identity in the face of a precarious and restricted future, I am grateful for what the heart attack has taught me. I recognize now that I am not and never have been a masterful and autonomous subject, that I am fundamentally defenseless and dependent on others. And the recognition of our shared vulnerability is healing, insofar as it binds us together in the wake of pain and loss, reminding us that we are not alone in our suffering." So that's the longest quote I've ever read in one of these videos, but I hope you feel, as I do, that it's worth it. It's such a wonderful example of what I'm calling re-envisioning. Kevin is having to re-envision his entire life and his entire identity, and even the very nature of existence. Um, so the illness has brought about a change in the trajectory of his life, but he's found a way to experience that and reframe that in a way that's very positive and helpful, gives him a new direction, but a very rich, and in some ways even richer direction than what his life had been built on previously. He's dealing with restriction, but he's also dealing with the opening up of his heart and his relationships and a new understanding of what personal strength can look like. So this re-envisioning can be very important, especially when we're dealing with kind of serious injury, illness, or the serious changes that aging can bring. Once again, there's a shadow side. Not everybody wants to re-envision their whole life when they have an injury and illness. For some people, that illness is simply a discrete, undisruptive experience, and they want a treatment for such. They don't want to go deeply into their uh, existential narrative. Another thing to watch out for is that not all modes of re-envisioning are positive. Um, Sometimes people can fall into a story that's kind of based on wishful thinking, like this was a lesson from God. I've learned my lesson, and so now everything will go well, and my healing will be complete. And then it doesn't turn out that way. Sometimes people, for example, will have a second heart attack. And when they have that physical setback, there's also a real kind of narrative setback. The story they had constructed falls apart, and it can lead to disillusionment and depression. Uh, it simply wasn't a rich enough or a true enough story. And then sometimes the story that people tell themselves is really negative. It brings in a lot of guilt, like I've been punished by God or by the universe for some of my sins. And this kind of lens of fault finding can darken your view of the present, the future, the meaning of this illness. Uh, and this is one place where a sensitive treater, it can be a healthcare professional. Sometimes it's a friend or a therapist who listens carefully to our story and helps maybe repoint us in a more toward a more healing narrative. That caregiver can challenge negative elements and help that person kind of come to a re-envisioning of what's happened that's appropriate and helpful to them. It can't be imposed on that individual. You can't rush in when someone's had a cancer diagnosis and say prematurely, well, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Maybe this will turn out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. People have to grieve, and people have to arrive at a story that is organically true and meaningful for them, not simply something that is being prematurely imposed upon them. So this notion of re-envisioning is crucial. Sometimes it unfolds over time, and we just have to look out within ourselves, or for a clinician treating another person, for trying to keep it in a way that in a direction that's genuinely healing and not not as dark and disabling, despair-inducing. So thanks very much for listening. And in other videos, we'll return to this chessboard of healing and lessons within my book, The Healing Body, Creative Responses to Aging, Illness, and Reflection. Take care.